Welcome to this Day One Conversation. I'm Peter Wallace, and today we're honored to have with us the Most Reverend Katharine Jefferts Schori, the 26th Presiding Bishop and Primate of the Episcopal Church. She is Chief Pastor of the Episcopal Church's 2.3 million members in approximately 7,500 congregations in 16 countries and 110 dioceses. As Primate, she joins leaders of the other 38 Anglican provinces in consultation for global good and reconciliation. Bishop Jefferts Schori was elected in June of 2006 and was invested in November of that year. Before that, she served as Bishop of the Diocese of Nevada, having been elected in 2000. Bishop Katharine, thank you so much for being with us.
It's a delight to be here.
Give us a sense of the range of your responsibilities as the chief pastor of the Episcopal Church.
Well, that begins with a duty to visit each of the 110 dioceses of this church, to foster and improve relationships with other parts of the Anglican Communion, to look after our covenant relationships with parts of the Communion that used to be part of this church, like Brazil and Mexico and Central America and the Philippines and the Diocese of Liberia, to set policy and in conjunction with the Executive Council and the General Convention to lead this church into a future that is evolving before our eyes, at times to speak to the larger society on behalf of the church and to speak to the church as well.
Your life has taken some fascinating turns over the years, but let's go back to the beginning. I understand you attended Roman Catholic parochial schools as a child. How did faith inform your upbringing?
Well, I began life as a Roman Catholic, and I attended a Sacred Heart school in Seattle, and it was a wonderful foundation to my education. I have still fond memories of watching the nuns gather up all their voluminous black skirts and run down the playing field with us to play kickball. It was an experience not only of discipline and searching for the best in an educational environment, but of being challenged to see life as vocation, and also of very much of a sense of being at play in the fields of the Lord. On feast days, we'd go to school and put on our gym suits and play all day. It's a very different focus than a normal day in the life of the school.
You earned a bachelor's degree in biology from Stanford University and master's and doctoral degrees in oceanography from Oregon State University, and it was some years later that you went to seminary and were ordained to the priesthood. Tell us about that journey from oceanography to the priesthood.
Well, I was working as an oceanographer and becoming challenged by what the future of that vocation was going to look like at a time when federal research priorities were changing in the mid-'80s. At the very same time that I was really struggling with that, 3 people in my congregation within a very short space of time asked me if I'd ever thought about being a priest. And I hadn't. It wasn't a possibility when I was growing up and making vocational decisions. But it was a surprising enough encounter that I went off and spent some significant time in discernment and came to the conclusion that at the very least the time wasn't right. So I went off and did other things in the community, taught at the university, was active in leadership in a number of community organizations. And 5 years later, right before the first war in the Gulf started, the priest in that congregation asked if I would preach on a Sunday morning when the clergy were to be away at a diocesan convention. And that experience and preparing to do it and listening to the response afterward finally let me say yes, and I went off to seminary the next fall.
You were born in Florida, grew up in the Seattle, Washington area, and later moved with your family to New Jersey, and you were Bishop of Nevada for 6 years. How has that geographical diversity influenced your spiritual life?
Well, I think of myself as a Westerner. I left Florida before I was a couple of months old and spent a few years in New Jersey through high school. So I've had a little experience of the East Coast. But the natural environment has always been a central part of my experience and the place where I think I first began to meet God. The West is home to me in the sense that that's a place where the unfamiliar is more familiar, if you will, in the wilderness.
Does that influence your spiritual life, the Western mentality?
Well, the sense of immense space and massive mountains, I think, does influence my spirituality. Desert spirituality, a sense, I think I would understand the early Hebrew people who were always going to the high places.
Mm-hmm. And now you are the top woman religious leader in the world. What does that mean to you?
Well, I'm certainly aware that it means I'm an icon in some ways for people. I'm simply doing the job I think I was called to do, and I don't have another experience with which to compare it. But I do know that it says something to others about the dropping of some barriers.
Mm-hmm. Bishop Katharine Jefferts Schori, thanks so much for visiting with us.
You're very welcome. Thank you. God bless.